Now, let me bring you some breaking news from France, where the Constitutional Council has upheld controversial government plans to raise the retirement age from 62 to 64. The court also rejected a call for a referendum on the issue. Riot police are on standby in Paris in anticipation of thousands of protesters. President Macron pushed through the increase in the retirement age without a vote in Parliament, triggering weeks of violent protests across the country. Let's join our correspondent, Lisa Louis, who's in Paris outside the court. Welcome, Lisa. Tell us more about the decision.
Well, there are two parts to the decision, as you just said. Concerning the reform itself, the Constitutional Council behind me has decided that large parts of this reform are constitutional, and also the procedure, the special fast-track procedure this law has been pegged to, that is a budget law procedure, is actually a valid thing to do. However, the government will need to look into some parts of the law, 6 paragraphs that have been rejected, because they are saying, the so-called sage, the wise people behind me are saying that these paragraphs are piggybacking the actual law, and that is not constitutional. When it comes to the second part of the decision, there was a demand for a referendum. The Constitutional Council has said that this is not valid, because actually the referendum was on the question if the minimum retirement age should always stay at 62. And as that is already the case in the French constitution, it could not be considered a reform. Mind you, the opposition has already filed another demand for a referendum that would introduce some new measures, and the Constitutional Council will decide on that second demand on the 3rd of May.
Right, so massive opposition to these changes that we've seen over the weeks. Is this decision likely to be appealed?
You can't appeal it. It's the highest court of appeal. What will happen, though, the opposition to it in the streets, at least, will go on. Some unions have said that if the Constitutional Council validated the law and the procedure, they would stop demonstrating, at least in large dimensions. But others have pledged. The far-left leader, Jean-Luc Mélenchon, has said that he would continue his opposition to this reform. There will be at least one demonstration that will gather all the unions, all the opponents to this reform, which will be the demonstration on the 1st of May, on the Day of Labour here in France.
Very good. We've been looking at pictures of the crowds and demonstrators as you were speaking there, Lisa. One imagines the French president is hugely pleased with this decision. Can you explain to us why it was so important to him?
Well, absolutely. He was obviously hoping for this reform and this procedure to go through. You know, this is the flagship reform. He has been re-elected with basically almost the only reform that was in his election manifesto last year when he was re-elected here in France, and he wanted to show that he is able to reform France, which is obviously a country that is very difficult to reform because there's always a lot of opposition to any changes that a government wants to make. And also, this reform seems to be really important for Emmanuel Macron, the French president, when it comes to his international standing. He wants to show that he is a strong leader, that he is in charge of this country, so that he can be taken seriously also on an international, on a European level.
Thank you for that, Lisa. Lisa Louis in Paris.